180. That's my neighbor's fasting blood sugar after eating what his doctor called a healthy vegetable dinner. The next morning, 240. One vegetable did this, and it's sitting in your kitchen right now. I'm going to show you the 7 vegetables that spike blood sugar faster than candy, ranked from bad to catastrophic. And the number 1 vegetable on this list, it raises blood sugar even more than a glazed donut. Your doctor probably told you to eat more vegetables, but they didn't tell you this. Drop a comment saying, "I deserve the truth," if you believe healthcare information should be free and accessible to everyone. And share this video to all the seniors who needs it. Only the supplement company executives and people who profit from your confusion won't share, because what I'm about to reveal will save you from medication increases, nerve damage, and years of unnecessary blood sugar spikes. And stick around, because vegetable number 1 isn't just shocking, it's probably what you ate for dinner last night. Here's what's happening inside your body right now that nobody talks about. Not all vegetables are created equal. Some vegetables are packed with starch that your body digests faster than table sugar. White potatoes, in particular, have a very high glycemic load. As a result, a baked white potato can raise blood sugar even more than a glazed donut. Let me break this down. When you eat starchy vegetables, your body breaks them down into glucose within 15 to 30 minutes. That glucose floods your bloodstream. Your pancreas panics and dumps insulin to handle it. But after 60, your cells are 70% less responsive to insulin. So that glucose just stays in your blood, damaging everything it touches. Your nerves, your kidneys, your eyes, your heart. And here's what terrifies me. Doctors are telling diabetics to eat more vegetables without explaining that starchy vegetables are associated with greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Unlike non-starchy vegetables, which offer protective benefits, they're lumping all vegetables together as if spinach and potatoes have the same effect. They don't. The medical establishment will tell you to eat less, move more, count your carbs. But they're not telling you that specific vegetables are sabotaging your blood sugar control. And this sabotage, it's completely avoidable. But you need to understand which vegetables are the problem before we get to the solutions. Here's what changes everything. The glycemic index measures how fast a food spikes your blood sugar. Low is under 55. Medium is 55 to 69. High is 70 or above. Most people assume vegetables are low glycemic. They're wrong. Some vegetables score higher than cake, higher than soda, higher than foods you've been avoiding for years. And when you eat these high glycemic vegetables, especially at night, your blood sugar stays elevated for hours. This causes inflammation, damages your blood vessels, and makes your diabetes worse. But here's where it gets critical. Not all starchy vegetables affect you the same way. Some are manageable with the right preparation. Others should be avoided completely. And a few will destroy your blood sugar control no matter what you do. I've spent months analyzing clinical studies on vegetable glycemic index, talked to endocrinologists, reviewed decades of research, and I'm ranking 7 vegetables for you right now, starting with the ones that are bad and building to the one that's an absolute blood sugar catastrophe. Vegetable number 7, corn. Let's start with one that surprises most people. Corn. Yes. Technically, it's a grain, but most people eat it as a vegetable. And here's the problem. Corn is sweet and starchy and best consumed in small portions. A cup of corn contains about 31 grams of carbohydrates. For comparison, that's more carbs than 2 slices of white bread. The glycemic index of sweet corn is around 52 to 60, depending on preparation. That puts it in the medium glycemic category. But here's why it's still problematic. Most people don't eat just half a cup of corn. They eat a whole cob, which is closer to 1 cup. That's 31 grams of fast-digesting carbs hitting your bloodstream at once. And the way corn is usually prepared makes it worse. Boiled with butter, you're adding fat that slows digestion slightly, but you're still getting that massive carb load. Grilled, same problem. Canned corn, even worse because it often has added sugars. The mechanism is straightforward. Corn is mostly starch. Your digestive enzymes break that starch down into glucose rapidly. Within 30 minutes of eating corn, your blood sugar is climbing. For someone over 60 with reduced insulin sensitivity, that climb can be significant. Here's my take. Corn isn't the worst vegetable on this list, but it's not innocent either. If you're going to eat corn, limit yourself to a quarter cup as a side dish, not as a main vegetable. Pair it with protein and fat to slow the glucose spike. And never eat it alone or as your primary vegetable at a meal. Score 4 out of 10. Moderate impact, manageable with portion control. Vegetable number 6, green peas. We're getting into vegetables that people think are safe because they're green. Green peas fall into this category. They look healthy. They're recommended in diet plans, but they're hiding a carbohydrate bomb. Green peas are higher in carbohydrates than most green vegetables. 1 cup of cooked green peas contains about 21 grams of carbohydrates and 8 grams of sugar. The glycemic index of green peas ranges from 48 to 54, which technically puts them in the low to medium category. But here's the problem. People eat peas by the cupful in casseroles, in rice dishes, mixed into pasta. And those carbs add up fast. Plus, the sugar content in peas is surprisingly high for a vegetable. That sugar gets absorbed quickly, contributing to the overall glucose spike. The research shows that while green peas have fiber that helps slow digestion somewhat, the carbohydrate load is still significant enough to affect blood sugar, especially in people with diabetes or prediabetes. And here's what most people don't realize. When you eat peas as part of a starchy meal, like with rice or pasta, you're stacking carbohydrates on top of carbohydrates. Your blood sugar doesn't just spike, it surges. The verdict: green peas aren't as bad as what's coming on this list. But they're not the free pass vegetable that people think they are. If you love peas, limit yourself to a quarter cup per meal and always pair them with protein and non-starchy vegetables. Score 5 out of 10. Moderate glycemic impact, easily overconsumed. Vegetable number 5, butternut squash. Winter squashes like butternut squash are beloved by health-conscious people. They're nutrient-dense, delicious, and recommended by nutritionists. but they have a hidden problem for diabetics. 1 cup of cooked butternut squash contains about 22 grams of carbohydrates with 4 grams of sugar. The glycemic index of butternut squash is around 51, which puts it in the medium category. Not terrible, but not great either. Here's what makes butternut squash particularly problematic. It's sweet. That sweetness comes from natural sugars that get absorbed relatively quickly. When pureed into soups or roasted until soft, cooking breaks down cellular structure, making starches more digestible. Cooked until very soft or pureed, butternut squash significantly increases its glycemic load. Pumpkin, rich in nutrients, has a high glycemic index when overcooked or pureed. The same applies to butternut squash. Research shows winter squashes offer nutrients like beta-carotene and potassium, but impact blood sugar significantly, warranting caution. Here's the bigger issue. Butternut squash is often served in large portions. 1 bowl of soup can hold 2 to 3 cups of pureed squash, meaning 44 to 66 grams of carbohydrates in one sitting. For someone controlling blood sugar, this amount is problematic. My recommendation: limit butternut squash to half a cup. Keep it firm, not overcooked, and pair with protein and fat. Never eat it pureed in large quantities. Score: 5.5 out of 10. Medium glycemic load, dangerous in large servings. Vegetable number 4, beets. Now, vegetables become real problems. Beets are often recommended for nitrates and cardiovascular benefits. They have benefits, but also a blood sugar cost. Beets contain natural sugars that can raise glucose. 1 cup of cooked beets contains about 17 grams of carbohydrates and 14 grams of sugar. That's incredibly high. The glycemic index of beets is around 64, placing them in the medium to high category. The sugar in beets is primarily sucrose, which gets broken down and absorbed quickly. Clinical experience shows diabetics eating beets often see significant blood sugar spikes within 45 minutes to an hour. Because beets are often eaten in juice form or large quantities, the glycemic load becomes even more problematic. Beets are marketed as a superfood. People think they can eat unlimited amounts because they're natural and full of antioxidants. But that sugar content doesn't disappear just because beets have other beneficial compounds. Beet juice is pure concentrated sugar with fiber removed. Pickled beets often have added sugar. Roasted beets. The roasting process concentrates the sugars even more. The verdict: beets have health benefits, but for diabetics, they're a risky choice. If you eat them, limit yourself to a quarter cup of cooked beets. Never drink beet juice. Always pair them with protein and fat. Score: 6.5 out of 10. High natural sugar content, significant glycemic impact. Vegetable number 3, sweet potatoes. Here's where people get really upset with me. Sweet potatoes are beloved by the health community. They're recommended in every diabetes diet article you read. Nutritionists praise them. Doctors suggest them as an alternative to white potatoes. But here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit sweet potatoes are still a blood sugar problem, just a smaller one than white potatoes. A baked sweet potato is still on the high end of the medium range of the glycemic index. Its glycemic index ranges from 44 to 94 depending on variety and cooking method. One medium sweet potato contains about 27 grams of carbohydrates and 5.5 grams of sugar. The orange ones, everyone loves, tend to have higher glycemic indexes than white or purple varieties. Research shows sweet potatoes, while better than white potatoes, still cause measurable blood sugar increases in diabetics. A study found sweet potatoes raised blood sugar significantly, just not as dramatically as russet potatoes. And here's the preparation trap. Most people don't just eat a plain sweet potato. They add marshmallows at Thanksgiving. They drizzle honey on top. They mash them with butter and brown sugar. Each of these additions compounds the glycemic impact. But even without additions, a large baked sweet potato can deliver 40 to 50 grams of carbohydrates. That's more than 3 slices of bread worth of carbs. For someone over 60 managing diabetes, that's enough to spike blood sugar into the 200s. The verdict: sweet potatoes are better than white potatoes, but that doesn't make them safe. If you're going to eat them, choose smaller ones. Keep portions to 1/4 of a medium potato. And always pair them with significant amounts of protein and fat. Score 7 out of 10. Medium to high glycemic, deceptively marketed as healthy. Vegetable number 2, parsnips. Here's one that flies completely under the radar. Most people have never heard that parsnips are a blood sugar problem. They look like white carrots. They're used in soups and stews. Caseum, innocent. They're not. Parsnips have a glycemic index of approximately 97. That's higher than white bread, higher than donuts, higher than most desserts. 1 cup of cooked parsnips contains about 27 grams of carbohydrates, primarily as starch and sugar. The reason parsnips are so problematic is their structure. They're a root vegetable that's almost entirely starch. When cooked, that starch breaks down rapidly and floods your bloodstream with glucose. And because parsnips are often roasted or boiled until very soft, the cooking process makes them even more glycemic. There is limited research specifically on parsnips and diabetes, but the glycemic index data we have is alarming. When parsnips are included in mixed vegetable dishes, they contribute a disproportionate amount to the overall glycemic load of the meal. Here's what makes parsnips especially dangerous. Nobody warns you about them. They're not on the typical avoid lists. They show up in healthy vegetable recipes. People eat them thinking they're making good choices. Then their blood sugar spikes, and they have no idea why. The way parsnips are typically prepared makes the problem worse. Roasted with olive oil until caramelized. Caramelization is literally the sugar's browning. Mashed into soups, you're breaking down the structure even more, making the starches more accessible. My recommendation: avoid parsnips if you have diabetes. They offer no significant nutritional advantage over truly low glycemic vegetables. And the blood sugar impact is too severe to justify including them in your diet. Score 8 out of 10. Extremely high glycemic index. Hidden danger. Vegetable number 1, white potatoes. Here it is. It's the absolute worst vegetable for blood sugar control. White potatoes, specifically russet potatoes. But all varieties of white potatoes are problematic. And here's the shocking truth that doctors don't emphasize enough. White potatoes, in particular, have a very high glycemic load. As a result, a baked white potato can also raise blood sugar even more than a glazed donut. Let that sink in. More than a donut. The numbers are brutal. Potatoes fall in the high glycemic index category. A cup of them can affect your blood sugar in the same way a can of soda would. The glycemic index of russet potatoes ranges from 85 to 111 depending on preparation. Off the charts. One medium-baked russet potato contains about 37 grams of carbohydrates. But here's the real problem. Your body digests these carbs faster than other kinds of complex carbs. These broken-down carbs flood your blood with sugar. This makes your blood sugar spike quickly. Let me explain the mechanism. Potatoes are almost pure starch. When cooked, that starch gelatinizes, which means the structure breaks down. Your digestive enzymes, specifically amylase, attack that gelatinized starch. They break it down into glucose molecules within minutes. That glucose enters your bloodstream in a massive wave. Consumption of foods with high levels of amylopectin elicit a rapid spike in blood glucose levels, which is undesirable for individuals, especially those who are pre-diabetic, diabetic, or obese. And potatoes are loaded with amylopectin, the rapidly digested form of starch. But here's what makes potatoes uniquely catastrophic. The cooking method makes them even worse. When potatoes are heated, the starch becomes more digestible, resulting in raised blood sugar levels. Baking a potato at high heat creates the highest glycemic impact. Mashing potatoes breaks down the cell walls completely, making the starch even more accessible. The research on potatoes and diabetes is damning. One study found that women who ate a large amount of potatoes raised their risk of diabetes. Another study found an 11% increase in diabetes risk. This was with each daily serving of white rice. And potatoes have similar effects. Here's the kicker. The glycemic index of pure mashed potato was 108. That's as high as you can get. Pure glucose is rated at 100. Mashed potatoes are worse than pure glucose. Clinical studies show exactly how bad this is. When people with diabetes eat potatoes, their blood sugar spikes within 30 minutes and stays elevated for 2 to 3 hours. That prolonged elevation causes inflammation, damages blood vessels, and accelerates diabetic complications. Here's what's really happening inside your body when you eat a potato. Within 15 minutes, glucose starts flooding into your bloodstream. By 30 minutes, your blood sugar has spiked by 60 to 100 points. Your pancreas releases massive amounts of insulin to try to handle this. But if you're over 60, your cells don't respond well to that insulin, so the glucose stays in your blood. By 60 to 90 minutes, you're at peak blood sugar. For many people with diabetes, that means readings in the 200s or even 300s from a single potato. Your blood vessels are being damaged. Your kidneys are working overtime. Your eyes are being affected. All from one healthy vegetable. and the aftermath is just as bad. After 2 to 3 hours, that massive insulin response finally brings your blood sugar down. But it often overshoots, dropping you below normal. This creates hypoglycemia, which triggers intense hunger and cravings for more carbohydrates. This low level of blood sugar tends to stimulate hunger and the desire to consume more high glycemic foods, so you end up in a blood sugar roller coaster. Spike from the potato, crash from the insulin response, desperate hunger, eat more carbs, spike again. This cycle destroys your metabolic health. But here's what makes potatoes truly unforgivable for diabetics. They're everywhere. French fries, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, potato salad, hash browns, potato soup, chips. Restaurants serve them with everything. They're cheap. They're filling. They're addictive. And doctors have been terrible at warning people about this. They say, eat more vegetables without differentiating between broccoli and potatoes. They tell people to watch portion sizes without explaining that even a small potato is too much. The research is clear. High potato consumption may lead to a sharp rise in postprandial blood glucose concentrations, finally resulting in cell dysfunction, or V cell exhaustion, and the occurrence of type 2 diabetes. Your pancreas literally wears out from trying to handle the glucose load from repeated potato consumption. Now, before you completely despair, let me tell you about the one way to make potatoes slightly less catastrophic. And this is backed by real science. Results showed that the chilled potato elicited significant reductions at 15 and 30 minutes in glucose, insulin, and glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide. Cooling cooked potatoes creates resistant starch, which is starch that resists digestion. When you cook a potato, then refrigerate it for at least 12 hours, and then reheat it, you increase the resistant starch content by 2 to 3 times. This resistant starch travels to your large intestine, where gut bacteria fermented instead of being absorbed as glucose. The area under the curve for insulin and glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide were significantly lower after the chilled potato. Clinical studies show this can reduce the blood sugar spike by 25 to 40%. But here's the hard truth. Even with this preparation method, potatoes are still problematic. The resistant starch helps, but it doesn't eliminate the issue. You're still getting a significant carbohydrate load. You're still spiking your blood sugar, just not as drastically. And most people don't prepare potatoes this way. They eat them fresh, hot, and in large portions, which gives them the full glycemic catastrophe. Score 10 out of 10. Maximum blood sugar damage. Avoid completely or use resistant starch preparation only in tiny portions. Now, let me tell you exactly how to implement this knowledge. First, eliminate white potatoes from your diet completely unless you're willing to do the cook, cool, reheat method, and limit yourself to a quarter cup. The blood sugar impact is too severe to justify eating them regularly. Second, drastically limit your consumption of parsnips, beets, and sweet potatoes. If you eat them, keep portions to a quarter cup maximum. And always pair them with significant amounts of protein and healthy fats. This slows digestion and reduces the glucose spike. Third, treat corn, peas, and winter squashes as carbohydrate sources, not free vegetables. Count them in your carb totals for the day. Don't pile them on your plate thinking they're just vegetables. Fourth, focus your vegetable intake on truly low glycemic options. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, and lettuce. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. Non-starchy vegetables like zucchini, bell peppers, and cucumbers. These vegetables won't spike your blood sugar and provide incredible nutrition. Fifth, use the food pairing strategy we discussed. Never eat any starchy vegetable alone. Always combine with protein and fat. This dramatically reduces the glycemic impact. The glycemic index of pure mashed potato was 108, whereas combined with chicken breast, rapeseed oil, and salad, it was only 54. Sixth, apply the food sequencing principle. Eat your protein and non-starchy vegetables first. Wait 10 minutes. Then if you're going to eat any starchy vegetable, eat it last.